Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, happy Alek Manoah Day to those of you who celebrate. Hopefully, it'll be the best Manoah Day so far of 2023. We are rejoined by Locked On Red Sox as we continue our crossover conversation, and we're really going to deep dive and take a look at the brewing rivalry, is that the way to put it, of Alek Manoah versus Alex Verdugo.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Craig Ballard. I am Locked On Blue Jays. I'm thankful you're choosing to spend part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. I'm also going to have to ask for your patience here. As you can see, I am having technical difficulties. A new camera is on its way, so hopefully don't have to put up with this for very long. But yes, a happy Alek Manoah Day to those of you who celebrate. Want to shout out the everydayers who are making Locked On Blue Jays your first podcast listen every single day. So wherever you take in your podcast, certainly see and thank you for that. For those of you taking this in on YouTube, a hello to you and a thank you to you for that as well. Wow, I mean, we've had, this will be the seventh Alek Manoah Day that we've had this year. None yet have been as good as the ones that we had last season, right? Of course, I mean, Alek Manoah, his 2022, completely special. The everydayers will remember, we talked a lot at the beginning of the year about all the projections, right? All the projections had, those projection companies, about 3 or 4. I'm not smart enough to know how they do the projections with their analytics and everything they take into account. I don't know, but we were taken aback with the fact that every single one of them had Alek Manoah taking major steps backwards in 2023. Every single one of them had his ERA at the end of the season finishing in the mid-4s. Really surprised me. And I, from day one, had said that if that plays out that way, I'm going to be very surprised. I didn't see steps backwards coming from Alek Manoah, and it's certainly still early enough where he can still author a really good 2023. But if we're having an open, honest conversation, the Alek Manoah that we've seen so far, his best games have been the games where he's grinded. And that Alek Manoah last season, his best games were games where he was completely dominant, especially with that slider to righties. That thing, the location of all his pitches has been a struggle this season. It has not been Alek Manoah-like, but the slider in particular. Opponents this season are hitting 360 against that slider. Are you absolutely kidding me? Used to be able to use the strikeout as a weapon, but now with him missing his spots left, right, and center, the strikeout has not been a weapon. There's been so many times where he's been this close to getting out of a jam. Has had 2 strikes on the batter, couldn't make hit his spot with his location for the knockout punch. We've seen significantly more walks as well. Again, the poor control that we've seen from Alek Manoah just has not been the Alek Manoah that we've come to love, right, just yet, right? So hopefully Fenway Park, where he's pitched very well in the past, hopefully this can be a cure for what ails him. Let's jump into more of our crossover conversation with Locked On Red Sox, as we're going to deep dive this game, as a whole, but in particular, we'll deep dive and continue to look at this budding rivalry, apparently, of Alek Manoah versus Alex Verdugo. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Quick reminder that tonight's game, of course, any Toronto Blue Jay game you can catch on Sirius XM. As today is game number 31 for the Toronto Blue Jays, I thought we'd deep dive some significant number 31s in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history together. First of all, 31 is the franchise record for most consecutive saves. Jordan Romano clinched that last season. It was a crossover, right? Some saves in 2021 and then into 2022. Passing, of course, a Blue Jay closer legend, Tom Henke. So, wow, I mean, Jordan Romano, 31 saves in a row. I know we're going to look at a few different 31s here. That might be the most impressive. Like that is insanely impressive. 31 in a row without blowing a save. My goodness. How about 31 is also the franchise record for most home runs prior to the All-Star break. That was Jose Bautista back in 2011. And remember now, in 2010, that was Bautista's big 54 home run, breakout, like holy moly season. And in the second half of 2010, Jose had 30 home runs. So in the second half of 2010 and then the first half of 2011, that's 63 home runs for the big fella. Holy moly, is that getting it done? Wow. What a really odd thing, just as a side note, you may remember that 2011 Bautista season where he had the 30 home runs, the 30 home runs at the All-Star break. He would only hit 13 the rest of that season. Now he would still lead the majors in home runs, for the second season in a row. Actually, I guess he would only hit a dozen, wouldn't he? No, he would only hit a dozen that second season. So he went from having halves where he was hitting in the 30s to just a dozen. Did have an injury in there, but and still did lead baseball. But still, you'd think, you'd think that might have gotten even more home runs in there. But Bautista in that 2010 and 2011 season. Wow. And of course, if you're a Blue Jay fan that goes back to those days, then you remember full well, there was no winning going on in those days. There wasn't a whole lot of things to cheer for. The things to be excited about Toronto Blue Jay baseball in those days, that cupboard was pretty bare. So thank goodness for the seasons Jose Bautista had. And think about the longevity as well from Bautista, just as a side note, right? That's 2010 and 2011. He's not the Blue Jays playoff hero. Like, he was so good in the playoffs for the Jays until 2015, 2016. So several years later, Jose Bautista, what a stretch of time he had with the Toronto Blue Jays. You can see why he's being inducted into the level of excellence later on this season. 31 is also the franchise record for most decisions by a pitcher in a season. That was 1982. That was Dave Stieb. He went 17-14, 31 decisions. He had 14 complete games. That was the season he had the 19 complete games. Every dayers will remember we looked at that record the other day. Holy God, like how incredible is that record? The very next season, he had 14 complete games and a 17-12 record, so 29 decisions. So Dave Stieb had a few seasons there where he was the pitcher of record. He was the pitcher of record. Win, lose, or draw, rain or shine, he was the pitcher of record. Last season, who do we have? We had Alek Manoah last season at 16-7, so that's 23 decisions. And then 2021 was, what was Ryu? 14-10 in 2021. So that's 24 decisions. Those are the only ones that even come close lately for Toronto Blue Jays as far as racking up decisions. Yeah, Dave Stieb, he was going to be the pitcher of record when he took the mound. It's a different game this day and age, right? Yes. How about 31 hits, the most allowed by the Blue Jays in one game? The Milwaukee Brewers came to the then Sky Dome and put a 22-2 beating on the Toronto Blue Jays. Holy moly. Imagine being, you've worked 2 weeks of overtime at a job that you hate to be able to afford to take your family to a game, and that's the game you go to? My goodness. And this is 1992. This is the 1992 Toronto Blue Jays. This is no scrub Toronto Blue Jay team. This is the team that would win the whole darn thing in 92, right? I'd won the division in 91 as well. This was a good team. So what the heck happened there? Milwaukee had, again, that was against the Milwaukee Brewers. They had 4 batters with at least 4 hits, and their number 8 and number 9 hitter, riddle me this one, Batman, how does this work? Their number 8 and number 9 hitter that game each had 5 hits. Wow. We marveled at Bo Bichette's 5 for 5 the other day. Well, Bo Bichette's a hitting machine. How about getting 5 hits from your 8 and 9 hitter? My goodness. Paul Molitor, of course, is part of that Brewers team. He had 3 hits. Dante Bichette actually came off the bench and had 2 hits for Milwaukee that day. Jimmy Key started that game. He went just over an inning, 3 hits. Then Mike Tomlin came in. He lasted just over an inning, 5 hits. Doug Linton would come in. If you remember Doug Linton, he would only record 1 out as he gave up 6 hits. Holy moly. Bob McDonald would have to just eat up some innings. So they had McDonald in for a little over 3 innings. He gave up 8 hits. That takes us to the 8th inning now where Mark Eichhorn comes in. He gives up 4 hits. That takes us to the 9th inning where David Wells comes in. He gives up 5 hits. Absolute hit barrage, a hit parade. Wow, Milwaukee laying the lumber that day. My goodness. Speaking of number 31s in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history, how about Dwayne Ward, who wore the number 31 for Toronto Blue Jays? Has to be absolutely, I don't even think it's debatable. Ted Lilly? No, it's Dwayne Ward as the best Blue Jay to ever wear number 31. Dwayne Ward, 6 straight seasons with double-digit saves. He was a setup man, a closer, you name it. He was just a legit back of the bullpen arm. So consistent, so reliable. Was such a fan of this guy. And how about in the playoffs as well? Did this guy come through? Did number 31, Dwayne Ward, come through for the Toronto Blue Jays in 92 and 93 playoffs? In the 92 World Series run, Dwayne Ward went 3-0 with 3 saves. He was mostly the setup man as well, but he had to come in and put out fires a few times for Tom Henke there during that 92 run. But yeah, so 3-0 with 3 saves during a World Series run. Is that impressive? And remember now, this is when you just have an American League Championship Series and the World Series. There aren't all these extra wild card rounds and all this extra stuff in there right now, right? So to have 6 decisions in there, have 3 of them be wins and 3 of them be saves. Dwayne Ward, my goodness. How does he follow that up in 93 for that World Series run? 1-0 record with 4 saves. He was the closer that season. 4 saves in a World Series run. And let's not gloss over that 1-0 record, by the way, because he was the winner. That one win, he was the winner of Game 6, 93 World Series. The Joe Carter, touch 'em all, Joe, you'll never hit a bigger home run in your life. Dwayne Ward was the winner of that game. I remember Dwayne Ward having some other big games. We're going to look at that crazy 10-0 Blue Jays comeback win at Fenway Park. There's a game back in '89. Cito Gaston had just taken over for the Blue Jays, and early too. It was like in the 4th inning, 4th or 5th inning. It was 10-0 Boston. Blue Jays would come back and win that game, and Dwayne Ward would be the winning pitcher. He was the only pitcher on either side in that game that was good, and he was really good. And Dwayne Ward got the save. Speaking of 93 with those saves, Dwayne Ward got the save in that Game 4 of that 93 World Series, that 15-14 game. That just one of the more incredible games you're ever going to see. And 15-14, so no pitcher came in and did well, except Dwayne Ward. Try it for free for 30 days. Just enough time to try it and then completely forget about it, right? Well, in fact, over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. You could be wasting money and not even realizing it. Rocket Money helps you find those forgotten subscriptions so you can stop paying for the ones you don't use. Do you know how much you pay for your subscriptions each year? Do you know how much they really cost? Because most people think they spend about $80 a month on subscriptions. Well, it's actually closer to about $200. So if you don't know how much you're spending each month, then you need Rocket Money. Are rising prices stressing you out? If you're looking for a way to cut costs, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions that they've forgotten about. Wow. You're very likely one of them. Like that Stars app to watch that one show, right? Or that free gaming trial that you never really used. Well, Rocket Money will quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you. And if you don't want them anymore, you just hit cancel and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. That easy. Rocket Money also helps you manage your finances in one place and automatically categorizes your expenses so you can easily track your budget in real time and also get alerted if anything looks off. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays here with Jake Iggy, Locked On Red Sox. We are into Wednesday's Blue Jays Red Sox game. We've got a bit of a game here. We've got a bit of a doozy here. And this isn't one that's just on paper. We're talking because rivalries are brewing between these two teams. Alek Manoah versus Nick Pivetta. Jake, this is already a game that I would have circled, highlighted. This is already one that I would think could have some great drama because Nick Pivetta is some CanCon. He's Canadian content, right? He's one of our own. Alek Manoah is a superstar and a hero in this country already. So I think the storylines would write themselves, period. But especially now, we'll get into Manoah versus Verdugo in just a moment here. But just to set the stage, Alek Manoah, 1-1 on the season, ERA just under 5. His best starts this season have been where he's grinded out the starts. He's had a couple of those. He's not had anything close to his 2022 A game on display just yet. Overall for Manoah, this will be his 3rd start at Fenway. His first 2, he pitched very, very well. The big difference this season with Alek Manoah has been the location, and in particular his effect of all his pitches, and in particular his effectiveness against righties. I want to say he hit, I think it was 156. I think righties hit 156 against Manoah last season. It's either 156 or 159. Either way, Jake, complete domination, right? This season, opponents are hitting a full 100 points higher than that. And you talk about the Alex Verdugo aspect of things. Alex Verdugo has, and Blue Jay fans are going to get upset with me here, but I have to call it the way we see it. Alex Verdugo has owned Alek Manoah, 7 for 16, 2 doubles and a home run. Now, the good news is the rest of the Red Sox combined 6 for 42. Manoah's dominated the rest of the Red Sox. But again, if we're having an open, honest conversation, Jake, that was a lot of 2021 and 2022 when Manoah had his A stuff. We haven't seen that on display yet in 2023. So we'll get to Nick Pivetta, some CanCon, right? So it's always easy to cheer for Nick Pivetta, even though he's a Red Sox still. But we'll get to that aspect in a moment here. But when you think Alek Manoah tonight, what are you concerned about? What are you looking for? And then when you think Alek Manoah and Alex Verdugo, what are your thoughts on that?
So I bet you guys love to root for Nick Pivetta because you smack all over him. That's why. But
it actually is true. But okay,
we'll get to that in a sec. But Alek Manoah and Alex Verdugo, I think this is a matchup that everybody's excited to see. Not only between our two fan bases, but just in the MLB. And I think you're going to see some stare downs. You're going to see some yapping at each other, and that's what we love. That's what we love as fans. It brings more of the intensity to the watching experience, and I feel like I would love to see whether it's Verdugo hitting a home run off of Manoah and he flips his bat and he's yapping at him while he's walking to first base, or Manoah strikes out Verdugo and they're yapping at each other while they're both walking off the field. Either one of those, that would be primetime TV. And I think one thing that, you think about for Blue Jays fans who are like, who is this Alex Verdugo guy talking crap to Alek Manoah when he hasn't even done anything since he cracked into Boston, getting traded for a guy who was classified as one of the greatest Red Sox prospects to ever break through the system, and somebody who's one of, top 5 players, especially when he got traded over to the Los Angeles Dodgers and Mookie Betts. But for Verdugo, he has the stats to back up his talk this year. And I think with him, he's one of the only outspoken guys on this Red Sox team. I guess you could also say maybe Kike Hernandez. But you don't see a lot of other guys like go out into the media and call people out. And I think, he wouldn't have brought up this aspect of emotion that he didn't like if it wasn't something that, he's been keeping in for a little bit. He brought up how Manoah was yapping at Bobby Delbeck and Frenchie Cordero and telling them to sit their butts down instead of just walking back to the dugout. And, I think you could bring it up with bat flips for hitters as well. Like there's 2 different ways of showing emotion in sports. And that's essentially what the episode was on in Rob Bradford's Baseball Isn't Boring episode when he had Alex Verdugo on. And so I think with that aspect, it just adds even more fuel to the fire to why you should be excited about this series. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch to see what both players bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, you can't turn the TV on, even if it's 10-2, you can't turn the TV on. No lead is safe at Fenway Park, but under any circumstances, right, when these two get together, no matter what's happening in the game, it's its own subplot, right? It's must see. I'm sure they'll face each other at least twice, hopefully a third time as well. Yeah, it should be very entertaining, Jake. I'm right there with you. Now, you mentioned Nick Pivetta, and you mentioned how the Jays have done against them. It's what's really interesting to me is the sort of ups and downs, the feast or famine. So you have the top of the lineup, you have Springer and Bo, absolutely owned Nick Pivetta. Now the next 2 batters, Vlad and Chapman, advantage Pivetta. Pivetta's done very well against both of them. You're probably going to see Witt and Kirk in the 5 and 6. Now we're back to advantage Blue Jays. They've hammered Pivetta. And I do think that the Blue Jays will find a way to get Kevin Biggio in the game today as he's 5 for 14 with a double and 2 home runs in his career against Nick Pivetta. Excuse me. When I've seen Pivetta this season, it really seems like there's a lot more fly balls than I'm used to seeing. I'll say that. And I really see his, I'm hoping the Blue Jays really pick on that slider. Feels like his slider is being dealt with. What are you looking for tonight in Nick Pivetta? What does he have to do to be successful in this game tonight, in this emotion-packed game tonight?
He's going to keep the ball on the ground. I think, his ineffectiveness to keep balls at least out of play or in terms of, getting people on base. He doesn't walk a lot of people, but he does allow a lot of hits. And that usually stacks up to, adding runs on the board as well. There's a lot of times where, with Nick Pivetta, he reminds me a lot of an Eduardo Rodriguez when he was on the Red Sox. I always make that comparison because he'll go out there and give you a game where it's a 2-hitter. He'll strike out 8, and then the next game he'll allow 5. And then it's a back and forth just like that. Or sometimes he'll just have a stretch of 5 stars in a row where, he blows up the game, allows 3 to 5 runs or so. But he's right now a guy. This is a storyline to keep an eye on. He's a guy who's fighting for a roster spot or a rotation spot.
Wow.
And I think especially from what Red Sox fans have heard from him when the murmurs of him going to the bullpen have come up. He's been very snappy to media when that gets brought up.
Oh, wow.
And he's also been very sort of beating his fist down on the table of, I am going to be in the rotation. Just sort of, he has no willingness, it seems like, to want to go into the bullpen or allow his rotation spot, even though he's been with the team for 3 years now and has had practically identical ERAs all throughout those last 3 years with absolutely barely any improvement whatsoever. And so I think that's a component to look towards because, even though Garrett Whitlock is probably going to be out for, 2 turns through the rotation, James Paxton's on his way up. And, once Paxton comes up, you got to make a decision. Are you going to keep Houck in the bullpen or are you going to keep Nick Pivetta in the bullpen? And so that's a really interesting storyline to look at. And so I think he's going to be pitching with a lot more motivation in this series, especially going against AL East teams. He got killed against AL East teams all throughout last season. And, the figure that, I was referring to when I said, the Blue Jays mash him, he had a 5.95 ERA against the Blue Jays in 4 starts last year. And, that's just one thing that it's really tough to swallow. And it's really kind of crazy because, like I said, AL East killed him last year, but every other team that he faced last year, he did relatively all right. But, with Nick Pivetta going to be coming out with a different vengeance this game because he's got to show that he deserves to stay in the rotation.
How about Jake? How about you laying out for us that Nick Pivetta bucking the trend of your typical polite, nice Canadian? You're telling me that you're hearing a lot of actual downright pushback from him in the media. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit. And he's said that he wants to stay in that rotation, and he's not super open to going into the bullpen. And he did have a bullpen role in the 2021 playoffs and was very effective in that role. And I think for him, you're not paying him a lot of money, and he's in arbitration for, I believe, 2 more seasons with the Red Sox. And so it's sort of a situation, kind of like I spoke about when you asked me about what the landscape of this team is right now. You got to figure out if Nick Pivetta is a future part of your franchise, and if you're going to trade him or if you're going to put him as a bullpen piece. And so I think, we could potentially see that, if they want to see what do we have in Nick Pivetta as a multi-inning reliever, time will come in the next few weeks.
Right back with more Locked On Blue Jays in just a moment. First, wanted to mention that our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. So Rare MLB game weeks happen twice weekly, a span of 3 or 4 day span. So that's Monday to Thursday and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. At the end of the game week, So Rare MLB managers who rank at or near the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards, which can include So Rare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, and VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Prizes may vary depending on the competition. Head to sorare.com/lockedon, that's spelled SORARE.com, to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineups, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. That's going to wrap Wednesday's episode of Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick before we get out today, just wanted to mention something that I just saw on Twitter. Chris Black. If you don't follow Chris Black, I would absolutely recommend it. Let me make sure I get his exact handle. Down to Black. So DOWNTO and then Black, like the color, BLACK. Down to Black. He has a ton of followers on Twitter, so you probably are already. If you're not, and I've put you on to Chris Black, then congratulations to you. Your life is about to improve. He does fantastic deep dives in a lot of different sports, but a lot of really great Toronto Blue Jays in particular deep dives. And just wanted to mention something I just saw from him, as everydayers will remember that we've been talking about the woes, the absolute woes of the left-handed hitters for the Toronto Blue Jays, just not only not going yet, it's been downright bad. Even Kevin Kiermaier, who got off to that hot start, now, well, we'll get to him in a moment here, but for left-handed batters or rankings in Major League Baseball, so not just in the American League East, not just in the American League, in baseball, Toronto Blue Jays dead last across the board. Dead last across the board. There literally was a 29th ranking in there for one of the stats. I'd have to go back and look to see which one, but I mean, even still, so dead last or second last all across the board with these left-handed bats. Cavan Biggio, my goodness. Who even knows what to say about Cavan Biggio anymore, right? At the beginning of the season, I was willing to have him see some at-bats because maybe the no shift was going to help him. I've said many times that it's possible that the last couple seasons we did not see much, if at all, of Cavan Biggio healthy. So I didn't mind giving him some at-bats a shot. Whit Merrifield is my guy for second base, but Biggio can play different spots as well. But he has just been absolutely putrid, right? Absolutely putrid. Brandon Belt. We're now, for me anyway, in the time to start panicking about Brandon Belt. He was injured last season, so showed up to spring training and didn't do much in spring training. Showed up a little later because, getting that he's older, so that recovery was going to take a while. But he's had enough time at this point where he's had enough time to get adjusted. He's had enough time during the regular season, which was like a spring training for him. I've got San Francisco Giant fans who were just over the moon, glowing what a leader he is and how great of an addition he was to or he would be for the Toronto Blue Jays. We're not privy to the locker room stuff, so who knows about that aspect? But between the lines, between innings 1 through 9, wow, a complete swing and a miss, no pun intended. And it's really why I think he might be done, because these swings and misses we're seeing from him on fastballs right down the middle, can't catch up, can't put it in play. How about who am I missing here? Kevin Kiermaier. Now, Kiermaier is the only one I'm not going to be at all panicked about. No matter how long you've been watching baseball for, you've seen a lot of changes, right? Even if you're just new to baseball, thanks to Rob Manfred, you've seen a million changes anyways. But one thing that does remain constant, or that does remain true, because there are a handful of things that still remain true. And one of those is you can still be a World Series contender. You can still be, a very legitimate baseball team and have a terrible or a poor hitter, however you want to put it, in the 9 spot. If that, struggling poor hitter in the 9 spot is elite defensively, well, that does describe Kevin Kiermaier. So all we've ever wanted from him was to be, decent. If he could be good offensively, pair that with his incredible defense, my gosh, what an asset for the Toronto Blue Jays. But even if he could be decent offensively, I will take it. Dalton Varsho. Wow. What? I mean, I'm not even going to deep dive this right now because there's just no time or energy right now to deep dive something like this. But clearly, we're all extremely, extremely underwhelmed with Dalton Varsho. Not only were the expectations, very high for this guy, but this was the return asset for Gabriel Moreno, who at the time of the trade was the number 1 prospect in baseball. When have you seen a trade for the number 1 prospect in baseball? I can't say it's unprecedented because I don't know that I don't know if it was unprecedented or not, but it's certainly not your everyday. And even though the Blue Jays were dealing from a position of strength, catcher spot is great here in Toronto, still cannot afford to take such a bath, such a step backwards. Dalton Varsho has been terrible. John Schneider somehow running him in the middle of the lineup every single day. I have no idea why. I've always wanted Varsho, Witt, and Kiermaier to be the 7, 8, 9. It would be the best base running bottom of the lineup in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history. It would be the most dynamic base running at the bottom of the lineup in the history of the Toronto Blue Jays. So I hope a move like that is coming sooner rather than later. But I just wanted to touch on those things because we were just talking yesterday about the struggles of these Blue Jays lefties. Keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're a fantasy baseball fan like myself, then tune into Locked On Fantasy. And if you're a baseball fan of teams other than the Toronto Blue Jays as well, don't forget there is Locked On MLB. And for the game tonight, remember to take that in on Sirius XM.